And we're in. Dave in the house with
Dean,
and by way
Dean.
of camera, James with his Brave shirt. I like that.
Yeah, my Ronald Acuna shirt because he's getting back in the lineup tonight. So, in honor of Ronald Acuna, I got his jersey on.
I like it. Welcome to SFP Sports. We come to you each week, and we'll continue to do so. These are my co-hosts. This is the crew. We may have others join us from time to time. We may have interviews from time to time. We're going to cover all sports as best as we can. We're fans, and we have our opinions just like everybody else. We're willing to let you share yours in the chat. We'll highlight it. Just make sure we're not hardcore, but make sure that it's really family friendly. I'm not going to put up curse words and things on the screen. A minor one, we're not going to get mad, but because people get passionate in their sports, but we can keep it clean. I have kids watching. I do have teenagers that watch our programs and like every program. By the way, to the guy on Parlor today, whenever he sees this, thank you so much. We had a guy that went through and he liked every program we've ever put up, which that's quite a bit. I don't know about Parlor, but we have over 1,000 videos out there since we started. Parlor probably has, I know it has at least 600 or 700. And you know what? That's the kind of fans we got. Just people that watch the show, they care, they're really cool, and they like what we do. And for those that don't, they find another channel.
That's right. I agree.
So also don't forget we have our racing hour, which was with Dean. Sometimes James is able to join us too. We talk racing on a whole another night. Although we're willing to talk racing.
That's right.
In fact, I'm sure with Dean here, we'll talk racing, right?
Yeah. Plenty to talk about, right, Dean?
Yeah, whatever.
Plenty to talk about. Hope everybody's been doing well. On the front end, I will say my wife came home today. She is resting and is glad to be home. And so thanks for all the prayers and everything for that. We've got a lot of exciting things going on with the podcast, and we're working behind the scenes feverishly to get them done. Also, we want to say happy weekend.
That's right. Friday.
Special shout out tonight to our good friend Jerry Barrett, Pastor Jerry Barrett, who's in the hospital. Please pray for him. His wife was making an appeal today. He's a great friend of the program. I've known him for several years, and he comes into our show, our streams a lot, chats, and he calls me and sends me encouraging messages on Sundays, and my heart goes out to him. But y'all pray for him. He's probably at Emory if I had to guess. So pray for Jerry. All right, guys, let's talk some sports.
All right.
We're going to put up some things and kind of go through some things. We're just going to hit notes, and we'll talk about whatever. But let's get a kind of an idea of a few things. And I made the NBA standings first.
Okay.
So we can talk NBA for a few minutes. It's hard for me to put up NBA, guys, because my teams are at the very bottom of this list. I mean, come on, Hawks. I mean, they're not at the very bottom, but they're always right there in the middle of nowhere.
You know what's so funny about the Hawks? If you go back 10 years in their record, they got the same wins as they do losses.
I know.
They're stuck at 500. They're stuck.
I know. 40 and 42. Cavaliers, Celtics, and the Knicks had a crushing defeat. Can they overcome that? Don't know.
Yeah.
Pacers, Bucks, Pistons, and then the Magic are at 500. Hawks just behind them. And my 76ers, horrible year. Horrible year. What happened to this team, James? Dean, they went from championship material to 20 and 58.
They're aging. A lot of the superstars of maybe 5 years ago are 5 years older. So a lot of those younger teams, like Boston last year, are hitting their stride, hitting their peak. So a lot of the Kevin Durant's and Golden State Warriors and LeBron James, they're not necessarily past their prime, but they need more core pieces that are younger to help them out. So when you got the young Indiana Pacers, the young Cavaliers, younger Knicks, the younger Minnesota Timberwolves. It's a team I'm going to root for in the playoffs because it's got the guy from Georgia on that team, Ant-Man.
Yeah.
But those are younger squads. So sometimes if you're a younger, deep squad, you can outrun the older, aging players that doesn't have enough help around them. So that's kind of what's happening.
On the western side, the Thunder pacing the way, and I mean just blitzing everybody.
Yeah.
The Rockets, Lakers, still relevant, third in the conference. The Nuggets, Clippers, Timberwolves that you mentioned, Warriors, still playing well. Another aging top team, really.
Yeah.
Grizzlies, and then you kind of drop off to the 500 and below teams. Yeah. It's really, when you look down that list and teams that used to make a good push for the playoffs, the Mavericks, the Suns, the Spurs.
Yeah, they're at the bottom.
And I go way back because I'm old, but you go back in the Jazz. Remember the great Jazz years,
Yeah, Carl Stockton. Every year they made the playoffs. Every year.
Never could quite put it together, but
well, you were over there with the San Antonio Spurs. And the San Antonio Spurs at that time, man, they had it together. They had David Robinson and Tim Duncan, and they were kind of, they just kept a dynasty rolling. And sometimes you can do that. You can if you add a star to your aging star and kind of keep your dynasty going, it never misses a beat. But if you don't continue to add those stars and add those core pieces, you fall off eventually.
I know some people would think of great all-time Spurs. They would put some other names. But I go back, and one of my favorite players of all times was the Iceman, the great George Gervin. I just loved watching him play. What a slick player, great shooter. I just loved watching him play. He was it wasn't my favorite team, but I used to love to watch him play. So, but there was some really great teams. But, you move on, different players come along, and there's a lot of exciting young talent, but that's kind of where we're at. We'll watch to see how the playoffs go. But there you go for your NBA. We're always welcome to come back and talk about it. But anyway, some standings there. Hockey standings. Hey, how about some hockey standings?
They're in the midst of a playoff right now, and the Oilers are leading, or Dallas leads the series 1-0 in the Oilers versus the Stars, and Florida leads their series against the Hurricanes 2-0. So there's some teams there that need to kind of catch up. So.
Yeah, and again, some of those teams that used to be really at the top of the list, the Flyers, the Penguins, the Rangers, not there. And some of these teams that have played really well have not traditionally been at the top of the standings, but we're seeing sort of a change. I do want to ask because, and I know that we closest to where we all live is Nashville, the Predators, and we can talk. We're going to talk Predators, of course. They've done well, but I wonder if Atlanta will ever get a hockey team back.
I think they have sort of a minor league team, or some sort of a team. But when they got the Thrashers, the ownership of the Hawks at that time, owned the Thrashers, kind of like what Arthur Blank does with the soccer and the football, and he owns multiple sports teams. But anyway, they went all in on the Thrashers, and they actually made the playoffs right before they relocated, and they just got swept in the playoff, and a lot of the fans in the Atlanta area just lost interest in hockey because you got to keep a winning team to bring the fans to see the games or to see the matches. And once they got swept in the playoffs, and they didn't see Sidney Crosby was one of the good young players coming out for the draft, and Atlanta was in in the mix to get into Sidney Crosby at that time, and they lost out on him. Somebody else, the Pittsburgh Penguins ended up getting Sidney Crosby. So Atlanta kind of just gave up on their franchise, and they sold it to Winnipeg. Now now they're the Winnipeg Jets. It used to be the Atlanta Thrashers. But you got to have a market. And soccer is real big in Atlanta right now. Atlanta United, they actually won a championship a few years ago, and they brought back one of their players. So if you can kind of win a championship or win a division and kind of keep the fans interested, you can keep an expansion team around. But if not, fans will usually lose interest if it's not a big sport in that town.
Yeah, I wasn't. The timing was bad way back to the Flames. They were there for quite a few years.
About 15 years, I think.
Yeah, there was talk about, kind of a radical talk about moving them far north of Atlanta and building this huge sports complex.
Yeah.
And that didn't materialize. But I think that Atlanta may be prime in the next few years to be a spot, because they're always looking to expand. And I know they've tried it twice, but I just kind of think if they can get the right deal, I just kind of think this time it might go.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see them come back, because the more sports you can add to an area, the better. The more
it is.
The people have more to go, to go watch, and for them to lose the hockey team, it was a big loss for Atlanta at that time, But, But you gotta put a winning product on the court, on the field, or on the rink, wherever you play. You gotta have a winning team, or fans just lose interest in that. So
it is Atlanta. It is Atlanta. So
Yeah. I mean, the Braves can usually draw a great crowd. They'll average 3 or 4 million a year throughout the whole year. But the Falcons, the way they raise the ticket prices up, it's hard for them to sell out the Mercedes-Benz, because they're not a playoff team.
There were people that got crossed out.
The Hawks going 500, when they have the Stars come to town, then they'll have the sellout. But other than the sellout, you're only, filling an arena half full. But, if you had a winning product, more people would come out and watch it. So
I agree.
There were people that got priced out when they switched to the new stadium. People that had been long-time Falcons fans that said, I can't do with that. But even then, their attendance hasn't been bad. I mean, they do pretty good. But so we'll see. We'll see. Like me some hockey. We're going to try to keep up with the Predators and kind of keep up with what's going on with them. And maybe all of us will get to go to a Preds game match here for too long. Let's move along. Baseball standings. There's the American League. Yankees stumbles a little bit, but they're still 30-19. There's no real threat to them right now in the division. We see Detroit pacing the way. In the Central, Seattle, a little bit tighter with the Astros, and not far out the Rangers. So baseball is really heating up. Good stuff going on. Some teams are getting healthier. It won't be too long. It'll be the trades. A lot of stuff will be going on with that. Then the National League, the Phillies, the Braves showed some great life.
They are,
but they stepped back a little bit. Last week when we were on, we said they had to really get that 500. They did that. They got above 500. Yeah. But the other teams were winning, and so now they're one game under 500. They're 7.5 games out. But they did good against Boston. I mean, they took 2 out of 1.
Yeah.
But they're losing to teams they should beat now.
Yeah, if the consensus is if you're playing a team with a worse record than you should win that game, or you should win that series. And right now, the Braves can't afford to lose any series they play, no matter who they play, and especially against the lower teams in your division. You got to win those games. And they've had close games, and at one point through a 7-game stretch this year, they either won a game by a run or lost a game by a run, and that was that made Major League history as far as that span. of 7 games. And a couple of days ago, they had the best record since April 18th, but it's just they've fallen off the past few games and can't close it out. And you got to be able to score runs late, and that's usually how the Braves operate. They'll kind of small ball or hit the home run, but when it comes to the 9th inning, they come up with that big hit or extend it to extra innings and usually win it, in extra innings. But it's just not happening for them right now. And maybe with Ronald Acuna coming back and getting on base, that might be able to, get them a spark to kind of get more runs early. Because, if you get runs early and you get your pitcher a cushion, it usually helps you win more games.
It's a long season. There's a lot of ups and downs. There's streaks. There's cool offs for every team out there usually.
Yeah.
But I myself don't think the Braves have the type of team that they can afford to get more than 10 games out. If they do, I think they're playing for next year. I don't even think a trade would help them at that point. They have to keep it under 10 games halfway through the season. They can make a push.
And with them bringing Ronald Acuna up, they had to designate somebody to make a spot for him. They designated Orlando Arcia, which Arcia the past couple of years has not been the same player that he was like 3 years ago. And with him not really turning things around, they had to designate him, and he could end up on another team, which, and if you're hitting, you probably won't. You probably can sign a minor league deal with somebody and work your way back up. But he could be done with the Braves now that they're having to bring Acuna up and making a spot for him. So
Chicago pacing the way. The Cardinals not far behind. The Reds and the Brewers are right there in the hunt. Pittsburgh is done for the year, I would think. The Dodgers are the dog in the league right now, and they have all the stars. But they're only up by 2 on the Giants and only 3 on the Padres. Those are 2 very good teams as well. Diamondbacks hanging around at 5, and the Hapless. Oh my gosh! Talking about Colorado, and I know we touched on this last week. I just want to swing it around before we move on to other things. Maybe Colorado needs to lose a team. Maybe they need to go somewhere else.
If they could just go out and sign a guy that hits 50 home runs, that might help them. But if you got ownership that doesn't want to spend any money, you're not going to go out and get those big name guys to come to your team. Which a home run here would love to play in Colorado half the year, because it's going to spike your numbers up. But it remains to be seen with Colorado how many of their players actually go to the Hall of Fame. How's that going to count against them playing for Colorado and hitting the home runs? Will it hurt them in the long run? That's what I would like to see.
It could. I will also just say real quick before we move on is I know that baseball Major League Baseball, that is, has had the couple of teams, which Toronto, Montreal, of course, Montreal moved to Washington. But do you think that they're about ready to do some more international, put a team outside of the country, and where would that be? I could say the same thing for the NFL. I think that's probably the next step, even though that's hard. I could see that happening.
I could probably see them going to Mexico.
That would be the place. That would be the place that I would say.
Yeah. I was thinking about Mexico.
I don't think they'll go back into Canada again, but I think they would go to Mexico.
And
you could get some of that international talent if you go to Mexico.
Yeah, and you could do both sports, actually. You could do NFL. Hey, what about this? What if they did NFL, Major League Baseball, and NASCAR?
Wow, mama. Now they're talking.
Put them regular on the beat.
Yeah.
I think that they're laying the groundwork for that. I really do.
Yeah.
That's money. Money drives things.
Yeah, all the sports would like to expand, but what's your market? You know what I mean? You have to kind of test the water and see if you have a market. But there's, NFL and college football. College football went to overseas and played a few games, and they drew good crowds. But it's college football. But how can you draw? You don't want to televise a game and there'll be 100 people in the crowd. That would just be a bad look. As long as you could draw close to capacity, you could expand it. So it's just
that and the travel.
Right.
The scheduling is what makes it rough. You would have to come and play at least 3 or 4 weeks in a row on the road in America, and then go back. You couldn't come play a game. Then can you imagine a team playing Monday night or even Sunday night football or Sunday football in America, then having to go all the way to England to play a Thursday night game? That would be a little tough right there.
I think they try to schedule it to where it's close to your off week. Yeah. That way you could, maybe play a Monday night game one week, then play a Sunday night game the following week. Then, or Sunday, a lot of those games overseas are like played in the morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, our time. They're so far ahead of us. So it's kind of strange watching a sports game in a different country because it's at an odd time, So
it is.
It is.
It is. All right. And then we look at some of the games. These are the games today, some today and tomorrow. Just giving you a little snapshot of what that looks like. Braves tipping off Padres 7:15. We'll see what happens. And so it's playing the weekend with the Pods, and we'll see what happens. Braves got to get it done. Hopefully it'll be a great return. We'll get to the Braves report with Dean here in just a second. But there we go. And there we are. Now we are ready for Dean's Braves report. Brought to you by Patriot Mobile. Make the switch today. A great company. I was explaining to someone today, they were with another carrier. They said, I showed them the process. They said, that's cheaper than what I'm paying now. So I think they're going to do it. And I told them, check it out. Be sure it's right for them. But I think they are. And they're going to use that promo code Cornbread and help the Southern Fried out as well. We love us some Patriot Mobile. Great company. And they just sent us some things today. We didn't even have time to get it up for this show. There's a referral program for those that make the switch to Patriot Mobile. There's ways if you get others to come, you're gonna get some savings too that'll come off your bill and stuff. It just was announced today or yesterday. I didn't even have time to get it up into the streams. We'll get a card made for it. But Patriot Mobile. All right, Dean. I see that big race car there.
Oh yeah.
And a baseball player, Dale Jr. All right, Dean, you're up.
Okay, here's Dean's notes. Acuna could return in the coming days. And James, they come back tonight, huh? I bet you see Acuna back.
Go Braves.
I didn't know this till just now. Braves is below 500. I didn't know that.
Well, just below.
Yeah, they lost last night. So.
Okay, now here we go with Dale Jr. We'll drive the number 8 race car he won at Daytona 24 years ago to support Speedway Classic at Anderson Speedway in the Car Tours Series on August 16th.
Ah, cool.
And that's Dean's notes.
Dean's notes. Speaking of the race, the 600's coming. I've been seeing the ads for the Prime Network, showing Dale in the car and everything. So there'll be a great tie-in there. The South, no matter what other teams is here, the Braves are they're still the Southern team.
They are.
I don't care what anybody says. The Braves, because you go back to when I was young, TBS had it all.
Yeah.
And all them states loved the Atlanta Braves, and they were terrible.
Yeah.
They loved them some Braves. And going back to the days of Ted Turner and all those great teams, and of course your announcers and stuff, and it's we love our Braves. Hopefully they get it together, and we love our NASCAR in the South as well.
That's right.
And there's a great tie in here between NASCAR and the Braves, and looking for that. Thanks, Dean. He'll be coming each week and giving us some news and notes about the Braves, and we're excited to have him. And love us some Braves.
There we go.
NASCAR. It's going to be a great weekend. Let's think about those soldiers who have laid down their life for our country, for the cost. That's the sacrifice for freedom. And thank a veteran this weekend, someone who served his country. And I know we're going to get together with families and everything, but it's it's all about remembering. And the podcast will be 1 year old on Monday officially. Our first video that went up, and that's what we did. We honored Memorial Day. So 1 year old, that's our birthday. We'll probably celebrate that Monday night on the show. But thank you, Dean. All right.
Thank you.
And then I wanted to look at. Go ahead.
About when NASCAR goes to Amazon and they're not going to have a commercial doing the green flag. Do you know more about that?
I've heard something about that, but I haven't researched it yet.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure they'll have a sponsor that will just be up on the screen and keep the racing going. They've done that before for some other races.
I'll look into that, but I'll have it in my notes come next week. I'll have it in my notes. I'll research that. I'll just say that.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course, I think it's fair to say we need to grade how Prime does.
That's right.
With the NASCAR race.
Yes.
I mean, they've done football now, and they were choppy coming out of the gate with football.
Yes.
Yeah, Jerry Jones was not happy about their NFL coverage because, you have so many people logging in. Sometimes it will crash a site and slow down a site or slow down coverage where it's choppy. So when you put a big sports event on something like Amazon, you are taking a risk, and we'll see how NASCAR does with it. Hopefully they do well.
Yeah, let's take notes off this race and see what we think they did good.
I will. Oh, yeah.
And then what we think they could improve on. Not to crack on them. I don't think anybody could take on a major sporting event for the first time as a network that's never done it and do it perfect. I mean, I think that's almost impossible to ask for. But I will say the crashes were the worst thing.
Oh, yeah.
People were frustrated,
And the worst thing you could do is have a crash at the end of a race or end of a game or anything like that. Because you would have a lot of upset fans of that sport if they missed the ending. Nobody wants to miss the ending.
No.
You got to avoid that at all costs.
Right.
And some of those fans on Monday will be quite inebriated. That I wouldn't want to be answering the phones
either
at customer service.
No.
I'll just be honest. Angry NASCAR fans, that would not be a good mix. I don't think I'd want to do that.
No.
All right, quickly here, and then we're going to talk about whatever.
Okay.
The NFL games, it's a little small there. I was trying to get them all on there, but I just wanted to look at the Monday night games. And last week, we looked at that Vikings-Bears game a little bit, but we got the Bucks and the Texans, the Chargers and the Raiders. By the way, I love John Gruden's thing he does where he's getting the boxes in from the teams. And he did the Chargers and the Raiders. I saw both those videos this past week. Those are some of the best must-see videos out there. I love those. But I got to say, Coach Gruden, those orange strapping pants of the Tennessee Volunteers, burn them. That was not a good look.
Gruden's always rumored to be Tennessee's next head coach when they have an opening.
I know.
And he's always top three. Go back into coaching, but can they afford him? Because
he has all those connections. His wife was there, and there, and
knows? Peyton Manning's the same way. They always want Peyton Manning to come back like Chipper Jones with the Braves. Whenever the Braves have an opening for a manager, they want some people want Chipper Jones to be a manager, even though he's unproven. People want that name recognition to go with their team, regardless of how they do.
Just kind of bookending off of that, I just have to believe coaches, players, it doesn't matter. Nobody likes for it to end in a bad way. You kind of want to go out your way if you can. Yeah. I got to think he doesn't want the end of his coaching career to be for the way it ended for him.
Yeah, you would think so.
And so he might be willing to shave a little bit of money off if it was the right location to at least get somewhere to build off of to make the jump back. And, I got to think he would want to go back to the NFL at some point.
Yeah.
I think it'll happen. I really do.
And, if you can give Bobby Petrino a second chance, like we were talking about a few weeks ago, anybody deserves a second chance, And Hugh Freeze the way he went out of Ole Miss, now he's back at Auburn, and so a coach deserves a second chance at coaching if he's a great coach or a good coach. So I think he will try to go back into coaching, before he gets, too old to coach. So I think he'll do something within the next 5 years or so.
I could think that he's not that old. I mean, he's not young, but he's not that old.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to do it in your 60s or 70s. You know what I mean? You want to do it while you're still relatively young.
I got to say, though, he scares the heck out of me with those knives, those box cutters and stuff that he uses. He even says, I'm afraid I'm going to slice my neck open. He throws the safe ones to the side. He opens those up that stay open, and he's just whacking and cutting and everything. And the whole time, that's the safety guy in me. I can't help it. Every time I see that, I'm like, man, I know they wouldn't show it. They refilmed that out. Well, I don't know. He might show it. He might be proud of a cut. He's no football guy. He might be happy to show a little blood. Who knows?
Yeah.
But we got the Lions and the Ravens. That's a barn burner of a game in week 3.
Yeah, that should be a pretty good matchup.
And some of these are double games. They have more than one game, so you'll see a double. It's not a mistake. They have some weeks where they're doing 2 games.
Yeah.
Get on down there. We'll see what the Jets look like this year. Bengals, Broncos, Chiefs. There's a nice matchup in the season. There's a Super Bowl rematch, but the Jaguars, can Trevor Lawrence get back on track? He did not look good this past year. So, and the Bears are getting a lot of love there. I see on some of that, but you see the Lions. But even the Cowboys there, I see in week 9. Cowboys again, week 11. Nice game, Cowboys, Raiders. The Falcons even get a little bit of love in the schedule. But we'll see. Monday Night Football is still a great viewing, and it's legendary. Although I love the Sunday Night Football and I like the Thursday Night Football.
A lot of those matchups too are expectation matchups. Yeah. So they're expecting a lot of those teams to do well. So that way they can televise their games and have some good viewership because. Just like the Falcons, they haven't made the playoffs in a few years, but you're expecting the Falcons to have a push this year. So that's why they're getting a lot of primetime games. And with the Bears, you're expecting the Bears to be better, and they have a young quarterback. So a lot of those games are expectation type games.
NFL.com has an article about the Falcons, and they list there's 12 players they list that were extremely costly to the teams that lost them. And for the Falcons, they list Dahlman. They lost at center. And his backup, they signed a guy, but they didn't play as well. And they may have to shore that up a little bit because, they're trying to protect this new young quarterback. And that's just something, if you want to go read that, that's at NFL.com.
I also have a note about their kicking situation. Young Hoku, he's okay, but he's not, as accurate as what he used to be. So they're actually bringing in a competition for Koo this year, and they're actually paying Young Hoku $4 million a year. So they're kind of hoping that the kicker they bring in will outdo Koo, and that way they can release him and save a little bit of that cap money and all that. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with that situation.
And there's still, what's going to happen with the backup quarterback. There's a lot of storylines, as there always is in NFL, and the Falcons are right in the middle of that. Of course, Shedeur Sanders, another big talking point for the NFL. But I thought that was pretty cool.
With Shedeur Sanders, they drafted that Dylan Gabriel as well. So with Dylan Gabriel, if he outplays Shedeur, they're not going to keep both because they have to sign one of them to a contract. So whoever outplays the other one will get to stay, and the other one will probably just either be signed as a, more or less a walk-on, or have to, be cut.
Well, there's one thing.
53 players.
There's one thing they say about the NFL, and he might not have won all the games, but I'll always love Jerry Glanville. And Jerry Glanville has one of the greatest sound bites in NFL films history, where they mic'd him up and he told the referee, NFL means not for long. You won't be long in this league if you keep making calls like that. Well, the NFL also means not for long. If you don't perform on the field, you're gone. Right. They don't keep you around for sentimental reasons. They don't keep you around because you were a high draft pick. They will, a quarterback will get kept a little longer, but you're right. 53 players. I have always thought that the NFL, due to the injury situation, and I know they've gave them practice squad and all this stuff. Yeah. I've often thought that was a little bit tight. I've always, and I know they, the money's hard to do that
the past few years. It was like 5 players on the practice squad. Now it's closer to 8 or 10. Yeah. So you get a little more leeway with that, but
I just think with the amount of offensive linemen and defensive linemen that you go through sometimes, I think at least at that position they should let them run heavy, at least a couple of more players. Have 55, but those 2 extras have to be linemen. It's just rough. I mean, you go through some linemen. I mean, you end up, got tight ends out there trying to play linemen. I mean, that's
a lot of those college players, when they get to college, they learn how to play center, guard, and tackle. Because when you get to the NFL, if you can build like a Swiss Army knife and play all positions, you're more valuable in the NFL because they need somebody that can plug and play.
And with the Falcons, with a lefty, their most valuable player is going to be from the right side instead of the left.
Yeah.
Because the quarterback's facing the other way. Not that the left tackle is not important.
Yeah.
But his blind side is now the right. So he might get a bump in salary if he plays really well because he's protecting that blind side of the quarterback.
Yeah, you got to have Penix? You get your gentlemen.
What's your thought? Go ahead.
Your tackles have to be, if not all pro, close to all pro, especially if you got a franchise quarterback that you want to protect because, like you said, if you're not that great at center, you better be good at left tackle or right tackle. Because you got to shore up some of those positions, if not all of them.
Yeah. And, what is your thoughts on
you can't run up the middle that much.
What's your thoughts on Penix as a quarterback this far in his career?
I don't think they've let him play enough. So he's still kind of inexperienced as far as, from a small sample size. Because last year in the preseason, they didn't let him play in the preseason. And Cousins barely played in the preseason. So to me, that kind of stunned his growth a little bit, not giving him a live reps, and they kind of forced him in at the end of the year, trying to hold on to their playoff spot, and it didn't work out. So I think if they can protect him and he doesn't have to win them games, if he can hand it off to the running back or his receivers can step up and help them win, and the defense can kind of help win some games, I think that'll take some of the pressure off Phoenix. But if he's expected to go in there and make them a playoff team, it may be too much for him right now.
It may be. He does handle himself well, but because it's Atlanta, and I've watched Atlanta my whole life, they are the masters. Doesn't matter what sport of doing the unexpected will happen.
Yeah,
and I don't wish anything on anybody, but Penix is going to get hurt in a game, and Cousins is going to come in, and he's going to win a big game for them, and there's going to be all this controversy about Cousins and Penix. Yeah. You wait and see. Within 5 games, something will happen.
And you brought up Jerry Glanville, but some people may not know this or may not remember. He drafted Brett Favre when Brett Favre was a nobody out of Mississippi.
I know.
And Brett Favre was a college kid going to the NFL. He wasn't ready for an NFL job at quarterback, so they traded him to the Packers. And Homer put up with that. So Homer made him who he was, and he became an NFL Hall of Famer with Mike Homer. But had Brett Favre stayed with the Falcons, nobody would ever heard of Brett Favre. So it's just like you said, quarterback's a valuable position, and you may start with one team, but that don't mean you'll stay with that team. If you can kind of latch on to a system that works better for you, it'll work out.
I really thought I was watching him, and I thought he was going to have a really good career as a Falcon. And I remember, this is years later, we're watching Sunday Night Football at a friend's house close by where I live. And I said something about, it's a shame he left the fight. They traded him away. And this guy called me a liar. He said, Brett Favre was drafted by the Packers. He's always been a Packer. And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. So I walked home and got the card that I still had of him and brought it down there and showed him. The guy did not know that part of the story.
He was a first-round draft pick for the Falcons.
Yeah.
But he did, he wasn't ready to be an NFL starting quarterback. He needed a few years to get his feet wet. But the Falcons, they were so bad all the time that if you get drafted first round, you're playing the first game. And some quarterbacks need more time than that. They need a good offensive line to help them, good team around them to help them. But you just never know. You got to hit the right
quarterback that stayed with the Falcons. And he was the Falcons quarterback.
And Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round, but he went to Belichick. In the Bill Belichick news, it's rumored that they're engaged now. Him and his new lady. So good luck. Good, congrats to Bill on the engagement. Yeah. Hope it lasts.
Live life. I say live life. It's his life. At least he's not out. Oh, at least he's not out on a motorcycle and having a wreck with his girlfriend.
Not yet.
Man,
that might be his next. That might be on his bucket list. So we'll wait and see how that turns out. But
that was one of the stupidest stories ever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What about Freeman with LA? Do you think he'll come back to the Braves?
Oh, no. Maybe as a one day late in his career. They signed him for a day before he retires, but he's a Cali guy. So he loved the Braves. He came up through the Braves. He wanted to stay somewhat, but they're not. They got paid. They're happy out there. Obviously, it's a great team.
The rumor with Freeman, and he ended up firing his agent over this. The Braves actually offered him a decent contract that he would have taken, but his agent didn't tell him the actual number that the Braves offered him. So LA kind of offered him around the same number, but not as many years.
Right.
And he chose LA's offer, and he found out months later that the Braves were kind of in the neighborhood. So, if you're from that area, sometimes you take what's called a hometown discount.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And, if you're loyal to a team, but it's a business. All these sports are businesses. And
right.
You also, you kind of have to be loyal to yourself, which it's not good for the fans to hear that.
Right.
But you also, you're to be in the business, you kind of have to make as much money as you can while you're at your prime.
Sure.
Right. I agree.
And I remember when he came to that famous scene when he came the first time back to the Braves, and he has to break down. He's bawling. LA fans were mad. They said, who did we sign? This crybaby. Yeah. He wants to be a Brave more than he wants to be a Dodger.
Yeah.
They didn't like him at that point.
The Braves ownership told him before that game, they said, look, we tried to sign you, but your agent said no. So he didn't, apparently he didn't realize it until that game that he could have remained a Brave. But Chipper Jones told him, he said, look, do not play around, man. They're trying to offer you, but they will move on. If you give somebody a choice to move on, they will move on if they have to. And they went out and got Matt Olson, which Matt Olson, he's not a bad player. He's a good player for first baseman. They got him from the A's, and they also got Sean Murphy from the A's, because the A's have good players. They're just a bad team. And sometimes, just like with the Rockies, I'm sure there's diamonds in that rough as well that will get exploited during the trade deadline. But, Matt Olson's not a bad player, and he's not a bad person. So to kind of replace Freddie with Matt Olson, it's not bad. He's younger, but you think the guy's going to stay with the team his whole career, and that rarely ever happens anymore. It rarely happens.
And it didn't help that Freeman had the great World Series.
Yeah.
Just sort of stuck it in the Braves' crawl.
But he won a World Series with the Braves before he left.
Yeah, he did.
So, I'm glad that happened for him and Dansby. They won the World Series and they kind of cashed in, which if you're in your prime and somebody's offering you, $200 million, $300 million, $400 million, it's hard to turn that kind of money down from the Yankees or from the Dodgers. Loyalty is one thing, but you also, if you have a family, you have to think about your family as well. So,
That's right.
Honestly, the bigger drop off was at shortstop. It was the Dansby getting away. Him signing. They've had trouble filling that spot.
Yeah, I mean, the shortstop's one of those elite positions. They had Andrelton Simmons back in the day, and Andrelton Simmons, man, nothing went past that guy. The balls never went to the outfield when you had a guy like Andrelton Simmons. So if you have a, all-star shortstop, they're hard to replace.
They're very hard to replace. And the young guy couldn't get it done. Or say Arcia had that great year, but he's not been able to match that. They've played pretty well defensively, but that's hard. And some were saying they were glad to let Dansby walk for that amount of money, but that's a primo position, man.
And a lot of teams nowadays are going internationally looking for shortstops and those type of players, because you want a guy that's 15, 16 years old that you can develop, and they're real good at their position, but their hitting hadn't came around yet. And sometimes you'll have that, because a shortstop won't typically hit 40 or 50 home runs a year, but they'll win you games because they'll make plays that other guys can't.
I'll just say right here, and I wasn't planning on it, but you kind of reminded me of something. I think another thing that's affecting a lot of the Major League Baseball teams is they've gotten addicted to looking for the international players where they're having to pay these huge buyout clauses. And that works about once every 20 players maybe. And some of them have been burned really bad. For every superstar, there's a whole bunch of ones that don't make it. But a lot of your bigger teams that can afford it they've fallen in love with going after those players and paying a $50 million buyout or something. That's crazy.
And the Braves, they kind of got lucky one time with Rafael Percal. They went out and got him, and he actually lied about his age, but the Braves didn't find out about it for years. He was actually older than what he said he was. And they asked Bobby Cox about it. Hey, what do you think about him being 2 years older than what he says he is? Okay, I'll still take it. He's still a good player. But a lot of they go out looking for those guys at 15 or 16 because they can sign them that young and to develop them. Because you can have a guy in your minor leagues for 2 or 3 years, and they're only 19 years old by the time you bring them up, 19, 20, 21 years old. So that gives you more time, which if you wait till a guy's out of high school, he's usually 17, 18, or 19. Then if you let him play in college, then he's maybe in his 20s. But if you can go internationally and find a guy, could probably still be a young teenager that you can develop.
That's right.
Honestly, some of these guys don't know their age either. Some of them don't have good birth records. If you talk
in the Little League World Series one time, there was a controversy where a guy, he was out just striking everybody out, and the age limit for the Little League World Series is like 12 years old. But this guy was like 15, and he was striking everybody out. And they ended up having to forfeit.
Yeah,
but, they want those young players.
Some of them, they just don't know their age, and they can't trace even their family. There's some areas of the world, and sometimes there is the line that goes on. Sure,
Yeah.
which is not uncommon. I mean, a lot of teenagers lie about their age in America, but you know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, and it pays for them, for their family to misrepresent themselves
Sure.
because they know what they're looking for when they go look for those players. And if your guy ages out, you know, they'll look over him. So that's why they want to kind of mislead, you know, so that way they won't feel like they're aged out and look for somebody else and say, okay, this guy's 16 and he can hit. Okay, we'll take him, even though he might be 19. They'll still take that chance on the younger guy.
Yeah, and of course you're trying to get away from those big max contracts and stuff, and you want to get them. If you can find one, that diamond in the rough, and get them signed for what's still a lot of money, but it's nothing like what some of these guys are coming in at. That's coming off these superstar teams. When you get a kid like that, he runs up through your minor leagues within 2 years, 2.5 years. He's playing on a major league roster for just above the minimum. You're saving money for a while. If he does really well, you are ahead of the game, and that's the game you try to do.
That's where scouting on every sport comes, you know, is worth their money. If you have a great scout that can scout talent, you know, you have it all, because if you can find a player or find a NASCAR driver, a young guy that not too many people have heard about, and kind of sign him first, you know, then you've hit the jackpot sometimes. So being a great scout is, you know, worth its weight in gold.
It is.
He's not real young, but I think, you know, NASCAR needs to look right here. You know, this guy right beside me, he could be the next great driver. You know, he's just never been discovered. He could be that next NASCAR driver, right?
Well, I don't know about that now. Maybe a scout, yeah.
Oh my goodness! Hey, you know that this hour just flies by. I love this show. I love the racing show. Love you guys. And any closing thoughts? Anything we didn't cover? If you want to expand on anything, this is a lot of fun. And I appreciate those that are in the streams that are watching. Hey, we just love sports, and we're going to cover as much of it as we can. And y'all jump in there and have fun with us. Go ahead, Joe.
I did want to bring up the lookouts.
Yeah, we go over
the rights of the Lookouts new stadium, you know, $150 million stadium. So it will be named after Erlanger when it's built. So, you know, that having the advertisement on the building is what they all want. So they won the lottery on that part as far as the lookouts. It'll be Erlanger Health Lookout Stadium, I guess.
That's $1 billion development over there.
Yes.
Hello, Miss Jenneth. I like what they're going to do with keeping some of the old building. Sinking that down and lookout. It's going to clean up that area. I mean, people coming in Chattanooga are going to have something better to look at than the old broken down mills that were dilapidated. That's going to be nice to clean up that area. And that area is going to really develop up. Chattanooga is in a major development phase anyway. I mean, you go down through those neighborhoods. As I was going to see my wife at rehab, I was just looking at some of the developments I ain't even come up with. But that south side has been on the move anyway. Now you're going even further south, and the lookouts. And I'll say it, I just never was a fan of the lookouts where they were. It was not that it was not a nice stadium. It was, but there was no room to expand, no room for shops and stuff.
There wasn't.
There was no parking right there. You had to park. You know, it wasn't that far away. But it's nice to be able to pull up and have parking right there at the stadium, not having to climb a hill. And no offense, Chattanooga, but sometimes the river just stunk. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
They're trying to clean it up, but the river did not smell good. I've been at games, I know. And if the wind was blowing the right direction, it was not pretty. You're trying to eat your hot dog that you paid some money for. And it's not. And the sun was right in your eyes, first part of the game. The way they spun that stadium. And you couldn't even see the river. I always thought the best place was across the river, looking back towards Chattanooga, and having the outfield there, the river just beyond the outfield. I thought that would be pretty cool, and have a spot where the ball could actually go into the river. I thought that was pretty cool. but you could look out and see the interstate. That was a nice,
Yeah.
So when these guys came in and bought the lookouts, they said, we're moving to a new stadium or we're moving out of Chattanooga. That's what they said.
Right.
Yeah.
And they almost lost them. This deal almost didn't get done.
Yeah.
So that's a great point. I didn't hear about the Erlanger, but that's big for them.
I saw that today.
They might have lost out on the hospital in North Georgia, but they got the name on the stadium. So consolation prize. Any other thing there, man? You jump top of your notes you want to bring up?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about Drake Baldwin for the catcher for the Braves this year.
Okay.
They lost Travis d'Arnaud, so and Sean Murphy was hurt, so they brought up their rookie catcher a little early, but he's actually played it in as many games as Sean Murphy, and he's kind of out hitting them. So they're thinking about maybe moving him to the outfield or something to kind of keep him in the lineup all the time. Because if a guy's hitting over 300, you want him to stay in your lineup. You don't want to take that guy out of your lineup.
That's
right. We'll see what they end up doing with their catching position now. It may make Sean Murphy a little trade bait because the Braves will have to make some moves this year, I believe. But if they stay around 500, if they stay 10 games back, they'll probably be more sellers than they are buyers.
Right.
At the trade deadline. Because, if you're out of playoff contention, you're not going to try to improve your team that much if you don't think you can make the playoff.
I really want to see the Braves sold. I do not like I know that they've invested some money in the Braves, but I would like to see them go to a different ownership group, to be honest.
They actually announced a new co-owner this week, and it's Greg Maddox. He actually bought into the team, so he's part of the ownership group now.
Yeah.
So maybe if they can get maybe John Smoltz or Chipper or Tom Glavine, some of the older players to kind of go on board with ownership and buy into the team, maybe that they can kind of transition and make it better, more competitive. Because the ownership they have right now, they spend money, but they're not spending money like a lot of the upper tier teams.
Well, it feels like it's right off of a spreadsheet. Like they've got a number they're going to look at. They're not going to go beyond that number. And the other teams that are willing to do that know that. And they're just not going to do that. So they want to put a product on the field that's good, maybe not great, but has possibilities.
That's right.
And keep the money where it's at. And they're going to have to spend more.
Yeah. And you can easily be outbid that way just about every time. Because if you offer a guy $10 million and him and his agent feel is worth 20 or 25 million, they're going to take the bigger offer before they take your offer. It just happens about every time.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's been great. I look forward to getting together next week. This is our SFP Sports show, and appreciate you fellas. Hope you have a great weekend and Memorial Day. Hey there. We appreciate all of our followers. Hello, Mia. How you doing? Got great kids, great family, and we appreciate both of you very much. Everybody have a blessed night. Any closing thoughts, gentlemen, before we shut her down?
We have Monday. Salute the troops, Monday. Salute the troops that we lost.
That's right. Visit the National Cemetery. It's a good thing to do on Mondays.
Everybody be safe this weekend. If you have to drink, please don't drive. Get you a designated driver and be safe. Safe on the roads for everybody else. So.
That's right.
That's right. All right, folks, we're out. Salute. James won at the screen, and we'll see you next time. Hey, yes, of our listeners, appreciate her. But we'll see you next time. Take care.